Let me ask you something. What if the most single dangerous upgrade the Boruto ever received wasn't Momoshiki saying, use all the power in the Karma Seal, use my Byakugan? What if it wasn't even Momoshiki's raw chakra? What if it wasn't even the Ōtsutsuki power? But what if instead the best upgrade that Boruto got was information? Because buried inside of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 29, during Boruto's conversation with Momoshiki, a conversation that a lot of people just treated as this is just set up for the eventual Jura fight, Momoshiki casually drops one of the most terrifying lines in the entire franchise. It's not shouted, it's not emphasized, it's not even framed as a reveal. He just simply says calmly, use the karma and whatever else you want. Now go out there and destroy our foes. And that line, that has the potential to change everything. Because Momoshiki didn't just say, use my power. He didn't just say, use the karma to the fullest, boy. He said, use whatever else you want. And when you remember who Momoshiki is, a guy who's been around for 1,000 years, and what it is that he knows, and what Boruto's already proven he can do with limited information, you realize something unsettling. Boruto may have just gained access to every divine technique, i.e. Shinjutsu, that the Ōtsutsuki clan has ever created. And worse, Boruto is fully capable of creating new variations of them in ways that Momoshiki himself could never even think about. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video where your OBC, your original Boruto chief, takes a deep dive into why Momoshiki may have just made Boruto more overpowered than he initially wanted to, and how this works to Boruto's advantage in a way that Momoshiki had not factored in. Also, we're in that time of the month. The chapter drops on the 20th this month, so spoilers will be dropping in a few days. So keep notifications turned on, and over on the community tab of my channel, I've got the chapter 30 predictions post up. So head over there if you want to leave your predictions. I'll be recording that likely on the day we get spoilers. So you still got some time if you want a chance to be featured in the community response video where we go over everything that you guys are predicting. And in the last few of these, you guys have been really good in the predictions. So getting right into it, let's look at the real cost of Boruto's revival. So when we rewind back to one of the most important parts of Boruto Part 1, it was pretty big when Momoshiki brought Boruto back to life, because Momoshiki states that he brought Boruto back to life, and now because of that, their thoughts, they now intersect. There is no longer a hard boundary between Boruto's mind and Momoshiki's. No hiding intentions, no concealing plans, no suppressing knowledge. This isn't just suppression anymore, it's mental cohabitation. And that makes that whole omnipotence arc and the theme about cohabitation that Shikamaru was talking about have a double meaning, because as Shikamaru was explaining this, Momoshiki was shown in the manga outside of Boruto's body cohabitating. And that matters because Momoshiki isn't just an Ōtsutsuki powerhouse. He is an Ōtsutsuki archivist. If you really want to think about it, he's kind of like a Nico Robin in a way. Nico Robin from One Piece reads all these books and etc., has all this knowledge. Momoshiki has a lot of knowledge as well, because back in Part 1, Momoshiki made a claim that I think a lot of people have brushed past or they've forgotten. He stated he possessed knowledge of every single Shinjutsu. Not some, not many, all of them. Shinjutsu, divine techniques, they are a fundamental source of the Naruto universe. Ninjutsu, they're just a crude imitation of them. Senjutsu, that's just a workaround when you think about it. Scientific ninja tools, that's just mankind using science, again, trying to find a workaround. Shinjutsu is the original language that reality was written in. And now that knowledge, it's sitting potentially inside of Boruto's brain because of the Momoshiki effect. It basically sets up the theme of knowledge versus mastery, and this is extremely scary when you think about it. This is why it gets more dangerous. Knowing a Shinjutsu doesn't mean that you can perform it. I know how to perform a kip-up. I ain't been able to perform a kip-up since I was in high school. It's the same thing here. Knowing Shinjutsu doesn't mean that you can perform it. Momoshiki, when you really think about it, he kind of proves that. He possesses knowledge of techniques he can't activate. He knew what Ada's omnipotence was as soon as he got information about what it was. He said, wait a second, that's not any type of shinjutsu that exists. And then as he got to think about it, he said, oh yeah, so the reality of her shinjutsu is truly this. And he started smirking. See, with someone like Boruto's always been different when you think about it, because Boruto is a prodigy, and it's something that rubs people the wrong way, even though we've had prodigies like Minato and Itachi and Neji, and all of them have learned things super fast. Even Sasuke was able to learn a change in chakra nature in only a few days of training, and he did all that off screen. But you know, when it comes to Boruto, we all gotta get our pom-poms and get outraged because Boruto's a super genius apparently, even though he's a super genius that is doing the same thing that all the previous super geniuses did. But I digress though. Boruto is a prodigy, but he's not perfect. He's a prodigy because he's adaptive when you think about it, and it was intentional. Masashi Kishimoto himself once said back in 2015, he described Boruto as someone who instinctually finds the shortcuts, sometimes at the cost of fundamentals. That was part of his arc in Boruto Naruto Next Generations. That was part of his arc in Naruto Boruto the movie. But now Boruto, he doesn't need the shortcuts when you think about it, because he already has the blueprints. Think about that alternate timeline version of Boruto that the story explained to us, the one that Kashin Koji observed. That Boruto, he took 6 years to recreate the Flying Raijin to make his variation of it. Why? Because Flying Raijin is an attempt to replicate something Ōtsutsuki can do naturally. Instantaneous spatial displacement, or as the series refers to it, it's space-time ninjutsu. Shifting matter from one location to another. However you want to dress up, that's basically what it's doing. Boruto didn't know the divine mechanism. He just reverse engineered it from scratch. He needed to be able to teleport. He couldn't use the Konoha seal, and he said, well, maybe I could kind of make a jutsu like that. And he said, I'm gonna call it Flying Raijin. Now imagine that same Boruto, i.e. this Boruto now, with the original Ōtsutsuki documentation downloaded directly into his consciousness. That isn't learning a jutsu. That's a porting divine code into a human operation system when you think about it. Basically, Boruto has a USB drive plugged into his head. All the knowledge that Momoshiki has a shinjutsu, Boruto theoretically now has it. Momoshiki said take everything. That would include everything. And I think that there might be a possibility that this ends up happening, because the Byakugan, that was just the first symptom in my opinion. So we already saw the first consequence of this deal. Boruto used Momoshiki's Byakugan in combat for the first time. He actually activated. Previously, when he fought against Code in Boruto Part 1, we saw that the Byakugan had manifested, but Boruto never used it for any combat purposes. He never activated. But now, he has used it in battle, and his combat efficiency is skyrocketed. His Flying Raijin, a technique that traditionally requires Boruto to sense his locations and etc. Boruto now has 0 blind spots when you think about it, because he has the Byakugan's 360-degree field of vision. Boruto, one of the problems he had was not being able to accurately teleport to different types of markers if they look too similar. Boruto right now, with that 360-degree field of vision, it makes him more dangerous. The same thing if Boruto starts using the gentle fist fighting style, which Boruto does know how to do. He was trained in the gentle fist fighting style, just couldn't target the chakra points because he didn't have a Byakugan when Hinata and Hanabi trained him. All of a sudden, that becomes more dangerous. The same thing with something like a Vanish Rasengan. We know from Naruto's manga, once you start using the Byakugan, if you hit a certain chakra point a certain way, you completely disrupt the flow of chakra to that point. Boruto can compress the Vanish Rasengan down and absolutely target something like that. And that brings me to something even deeper, which is that if he's got all these different things that Momoshiki has access to, space-time manipulation, chakra absorption, fate perception, because Momoshiki was able to see scattered parts of Naruto's future fate and Boruto's fate. It's important to remember Momoshiki didn't say Boruto couldn't use these. He specifically said use whatever you want. Basically, whatever you think you need to be able to take on Jura, you can use. Boruto you better believe, has never forgotten the fact that Momoshiki saw part of his future. And when Boruto saw snapshots of possible futures of what was going on, where Kawaki should have killed him and didn't, where Shikadai was hunting him down, it was fragmented. He didn't know the context of what was going on. Boruto is clearly traumatized. Boruto may learn a way to tap into whatever it was that Momoshiki was seeing and apply that to something in the future. That's not 10 directions though, but obviously that could be something that comes in handy. And that also brings me to this next point here, which is that we should be terrified because Boruto theoretically would basically be like a Shinjutsu translator. So this is why you should be scared. Boruto doesn't need to use Shinjutsu directly. He can do what humans have always done, even if they didn't realize that's what they were doing, which is translate it. Flying Raijin is proof of a concept, a human-compatible version of a divine jutsu. Minato and Tobirama didn't know that they were imitating gods when they did it, but that's what they're doing. If Boruto understands the logic behind a Shinjutsu, not just the execution of it, which he would because he has all the information that Boruto gets from Momoshiki, he'd now be able to create hybrid techniques, human-safe adaptations, ninjutsu that can function with divine efficiency. In other words, Boruto would be able to create techniques that Momoshiki himself never even conceived as being possible. Because Momoshiki thinks like a god. Boruto thinks like a ninja. Let me restate that because I think that that needs to be stressed. Momoshiki thinks like a god. He always has. He's had that level of arrogance about him going as far back as when Kishimoto wrote him for Boruto the movie. Boruto thinks like a shinobi. That's what makes their dynamic so good. Momoshiki was meant to be a mirror to Boruto to learn what Naruto and Sasuke are trying to teach Boruto. If you keep trying to take these shortcuts and find the quickest way to power, you're going to end up like someone like Momoshiki. That's what the story was teaching Boruto. And that difference matters. And that's why them cohabitating the same body right now is so damn important. Now, that being said, there is a horror scenario. Which is a potential Momoshiki payoff. Now, you might be going, wait a second. That don't make no sense. You just gassing up Boruto. What Momoshiki got to do with this? So here's the thing. There's a dark implication here. Boruto made a deal. Defeat Jura and Boruto gives up his body. And at that moment, Boruto doesn't just give up Momoshiki his body, but instead Momoshiki will also get Boruto's entire skill set. Every technique that Boruto creates from now up until that moment, every optimization, every shortcut that's been refined into perfection, Momoshiki now inherits all of that. That means that Boruto, in an attempt to defeat Jura, ends up doing something that might be catastrophic. He's not just becoming stronger. He's, ironically, updating his own vessel. His vessel being his body. His body also just happens to be a body from Momoshiki. By the time Momoshiki takes over, he may possess, obviously, his own Ōtsutsuki knowledge, but also human ingenuity and ninja adaptability. And now, Shinjutsu-inspired jutsu optimized for battle, using techniques that Momoshiki never thought to pursue because he wasn't able to perform them before. He wouldn't just be unstoppable, he might end up being a complete evolution. And that's the whole point of the Ōtsutsuki clan. Boruto is an Ōtsutsuki. It will be very poetic in a way. Ōtsutsuki are meant to transfer power by any means necessary. They're meant to evolve. That would be evolution. And that's a cruel irony when you think about it, a tragic irony really. Boruto is doing all he can to save everyone, to stop Jura, to end this threat, stop a chakra fruit from being harvested, protect the village, unseal his parents, all at the age of 15 years old. And every step forward brings Momoshiki closer to becoming everything that the Ōtsutsuki have ever intended. It brings Momoshiki closer towards becoming a god like he wants to be, but also the irony is that he becomes a god in this instance without having ever eaten a chakra fruit. And this really fits Naruto's core theme as well as just showing off classic Naruto storytelling. Power always comes with a consequence. Information is never neutral, and the greatest threat, it isn't brute force, it's understanding too much too fast. That was a character flaw for Boruto. Boruto isn't becoming a monster because he wants power. Instead, he's actually creating a breeding ground for a monster because he's too capable. The real question isn't can Boruto defeat Jura, it's what happens if he succeeds. Because Momoshiki said use whatever you want. When he did that, he didn't just give Boruto freedom, he gave him a rope theoretically. Boruto may be smart enough to turn that rope into a weapon at some point, but Momoshiki, he might be waiting to use it as a noose, and the person he's planning to hang is obviously going to be Kawaki. Which, obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, clicking here on the left to check out more Naruto Explained videos, or click here on the right, check out videos from my Anime Explained channel where I talk about non-Naruto anime and manga.